As busy moms, it goes without saying that we are entitled to our necessary breaks to keeping on with our many expectations of mothering. And me, your host, Flantha, is the mama down to join you for the necessary distraction we all need when life gets too hard, too real, and too much. Join me for an hour of necessary distraction of laughs, cries, and everything in between from adulting, culture, relationships, confessions, and beyond. Welcome to the Necessary Break. I'm your host, Flantha, and today we're just going to talk. Day of my life, what's going on today in this moment. And I can tell you, I'm sitting in my office and it literally feels like it's 62 degrees in the house. And it is dead winter here in Minnesota, and I think it's like 3 degrees outside. And the biggest champagne problem is that we have 4,000 square feet that we have to warm up every single day. And as much as I love my open concept house, the office is in the corner away from the fireplace and just does not get as warm as all the other parts in the house. And you may be wondering, that's not a really big problem to have. And I will tell you it's not, because when I grew up in like the projects, it was so much easier to have a warmer house all the time because there was always 8 bodies in the house and we had like 1,000 square feet probably that we all shared as a single parent family home. And that was better. That was better because I never had to wear many layers just to be warm, because currently I'm in 2 long sleeve sweaters, a thermal legging, and really thick wool socks to maintain being warm. And then I have my blanket on top of me while I'm recording this. And I will have to say, I'm looking over at my printer and I'm quite annoyed because I got the right ink cartridge, but it's the wrong number up. And so though it's the right fit, it's not the actual thing. And so however way it is made up, it was like $50. And that is a big complaint for me because I have gone out twice now and I swear I took a picture of the right thing but bought the wrong version. It was like a 52, but I bought a 52XL, even though the picture said 52 or 52XL. So that's a little bit of annoyance right now. You may be hearing my German Shepherd in the background. He's gnawing on a piece of bone, and he likes to be everywhere that I am if my husband is not home. So you will be hearing that, and his tag as well too. He is the sweetest little guy. And let me tell you, a few weeks ago, he had continuously defecated in the basement over the course of a week every single day that we've cleaned it up. And I'm a little bit on the crunchy side. So how I cleaned it up was with baking soda, warm water, and cleaning products called Pear Home. And they are, by the way, Black woman owned, and their ingredients are transparent as heck. And Beyonce even backs them, so you know that they're good. So anyway, I use the solution and I have been cleaning it just about every 2 days. And every 2 days I go down there and there's a new piece of section that he had number 2'd on. And I have no idea what was going on. The thing is like we take him out every morning, and since I work from home in the afternoon and in the evening, he knows how to go potty. He's about 3 years old, so this isn't like a new concept. And the thing is, while we were cleaning it, the oddest thing was he would look at me and continue peeing. Peeing, guys, peeing while I'm cleaning without a second look, without a second glance, without pity, without remorse. And I was just like, okay, something's completely wrong. So the other day I took him to the vet finally, and they were like, no, he checks out because he's doing fine. He looks fine. There's nothing in his mouth. Like, yeah, you can clean his teeth a little bit more, but that's it. So that's a little irritating. That's just one of those things where it's like home ownership 1 and 2. That's what happens when you have the most love of an extension for your second baby. I'm talking about my German Shepherd here. And honestly, I never really know how to answer when somebody says, so what's it like having a toddler and a dog and a husband? And I joke, I really, really do joke here. And it's almost like having 3 little ones. I'm kidding. My husband is a great support, and my daughter and Moose, they're about 3 years old, and they're like brother and sister. I kid you not. When they go up the stairs, it's a competition. When it goes downstairs, it's a competition. And those two are thick as thieves. They get into the most amount of trouble. He will help her get up on the pantry levels and grab the white chocolate that they should not both be having. And she's so smart in that she waits for both of us not to look in order to give him like a treat or her leftover meal. And I can't be mad. I can't be mad that they love each other so much. So that's the nice part. And whenever somebody asks when we're going to extend in the family, I'm like, why? How? I already have a second child. His name is Moose, and he sure takes up the same amount of energy as having a second child. He is so goofy. He is the love of all of our lives. I don't know what we would do without him. His backstory is that he came from Florida, and he came from the story that his mom was not in a great place and could not support him anymore. And we were able to do the quick transition as her home situation was not permanent. And though we had scheduled a time for him to be with us after my husband had come home from deployment, and it ended up that I was with him 3 weeks prior. And it was almost the hardest moment of my life as we had just lost my previous German Shepherd Bear, and he was only 2.5 because we lost him to lung cancer. And unfortunately, that was like 2 weeks in between having Bear and then having Moose. And that was a hard transition. And honestly, though, Moose has taught us that he is the most loving, gracious German Shepherd out there for our family, and that he is definitely an emotional dog. Like, you start tearing up because you're watching a TV show, aka the Grey's Anatomy, and he will be right up in your nose, and he won't really leave your side. That has, though, transitioned as when he was originally home with us initially. It was not, how do I say this? He loved me to the point that he would run outside whenever I was outside. And if I had left in the car, you do not let him outside until I have left 15 minutes later, or he will go running into the middle of the street and try to find my car. And that's how it used to be. Now, it's like he's doing this whole thing that my daughter is also doing, where like they pick and choose parents right now. And I'm fine with that when it comes to my daughter. I had a whole year where it was just me, and so I don't mind when she wants the other co-parent. And so that is not a thing here. And when it comes to Moose, though, I do miss him because he used to come whenever I cried or had a panic attack or anxiety attack. Now he's just kind of like, you're good. I'll be in the room with you, but I won't be on you. Well, when it comes to my husband, if he just gets overwhelmed really quickly, starts yelling because he's had a long day, which is rare and in between, just a hard day, Moose will literally be right by his side, like in his corner kind of thing. And I wish that was more often with me. So am I a little bit salty? I am because he is my dog. He was my dog specifically for at least 3 weeks before Parker came home. And I miss those times. I do, because I needed him to help me grieve Bear. And honestly, Parker was not too keen on Moose initially, and that was like his stepchild. And that's a horrible comparison, but it was. He was like, I love you, but I don't want to do all the things that I did with Bear, which makes sense. He was grieving as well, too. The way we lost Bear was just very, very unfortunate. And I guess I can go into that a little bit. We lost him. So my husband had just landed in the US after being gone for over 340 days. And on the day that he came home was his birthday. And the hour that he landed was when I was trying to reach him and had been told that we were going to lose Bear because what he had was invasive lung and heart cancer and had overgrown growths on the side of his cheek and also on his tongue. And at this point, he had been very fatally not in the best conditions, and we knew something was wrong. So anyway, when he was getting looked at, this specific day was also the hour that he was coming home, and was also the minute that he was literally stepping on U.S. grounds after being gone for over a year on deployment in Iraq. And so that was just an awful day. And then, mind you, the decision that we had to make in order to give Bear the best life, quality of life, was that that was going to be his last day here. And my husband, was not going to be here for that. that was very hard for me. I think it was like a quick 30-minute conversation of here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do that. These are the options if you want him to come home and have that situation happen. And here are the services for, picking him up and what to do with his body after it. It was very traumatizing because it's something I've never done before. He was my first family pet that we've had to let go so soon. And to have to narrate all of this to my husband was a lot. And then to add on that we were no means of capability to take on another pet. Moose came into our lives about 2 weeks later because we have the largest hearts, and I was looking at a fostering page for dogs, and I had previously volunteered for a dog rescue, and so that was just kind of always there, but not necessarily something that I was looking for, like to have another dog join our family very soon. So that's a little bit backstory. It's really unfortunate, but it brought us Moose, and he is the goofiest, most loving, terrorizing German Shepherd that we've had so far. And as I always say, if you ever see us about, he is the cheapest date. We can literally bring him everywhere and anywhere, which is amazing. Bear had some fear aggression, so it made it harder. He would never hurt his pack, which was about 12 people in his life. But anybody outside of that, he kind of just had a harder time transitioning. And I think a lot of it was just how he transitioned when he was a teenager phase to an adulthood. And just, I don't know, sometimes that's just how dogs are. And so with Moose, it was nice to not have to be heightened on when other people are approaching us, where they're at, and how we can navigate going on a walk with him and Avery at the same time and as a family, or if it's just myself and Avery and Bear. So that was nice. And so going back to the story is that Moose goes everywhere and anywhere that we go, which is so amazing. And he leaves us to any family and anybody who starts petting him, because he will literally sit on your feet in between your legs and won't move until he is done getting all the pets. So that's why I say he's the cheapest date, because it takes a little nudge to get him to not go with another family. And I truly mean that, in that he is just the sweetest little thing in the whole wide world. His 90-pound self thinks it's a little 10-pound grandma dog. And he is not that, I promise. Another thing I wanted to talk about was just, apparently we're like really old and we're only millennials. Like the 90s feel like it was just yesterday. But I think that right there is like what makes me old, because these Gen Zers are really aging us. So for example, TikTok. When TikTok came out, we're like, what is this? Who does this? I personally haven't heard about it before. It was like my manager at the time when I was in corporate was telling me that his sons, who were like 8 and 10 and 12, were into this new thing where you learn dances and you do this thing. And I feel like fast forward midway through 2020, it made careers. Like it made mom careers, and it made Gen Zer careers, and it made influencers a real thing. Like Kim Kardashian knew what she was doing back in the early 2000s, doing the whole influencer selfies kind of thing. I don't think she knew what the heck she was doing, but I think without her, we wouldn't have transcended as far as we have in being able to make a career out of something that feels like it's a side hustle. And I will say, I think it's so fascinating how far we've transitioned from everybody leaving their jobs. Literally, it's called the Great Resignation. That's what it's called. I think it's so cool to see so many people being like, I've got this and I'm doing that. And I will have to say, I'm going to add myself to that, because it's not necessarily like because of the theme that's where I'm headed. It's just more so I've been doing this, and it's really cool that that's something I can say I was a part of, because it literally goes to show you that women are literally standing up to the norms and saying this isn't how our generation and further generations are going to keep moving. Because I do feel like for a while we were, as the 90s, living more like in the 50s, and we're having those upbringings bestowed upon us. And as we have our own children, or as we're struggling to even have our own little family, I know a lot of us millennials, that's not a norm of producing children and wanting that domesticated 50s lifestyle. So it's interesting. It's so blended, and it's so cool to see where TikTok has gone since 2020, early 2020. I would say I know TikTok is kind of clunky for me. It is so raw in comparison to Instagram. I feel like Instagram is a little bit more put together, a little bit more restricted, and a little bit more pretty. Whereas TikTok is ruthless, wild, raw, but that's what makes it so good because you can't go wrong. And I think that online platform aligns with what human people are. What we are, how we are, and the fun that we bring, the joy that comes from that. And almost, I would say the actors on TikTok are way better than what we even see on TV. Like, they're making up their own content line by line. And I think that's so cool. Or especially when you see like covering songs. I try to do that. And it sounds as if it's them doing it. I love those. It's just, I feel like what they come off with that, or even the clothing transitions, are so cool and unique. Like, who would have thought about that? That literally goes to show you that the creativity side of it is uncapped. And I think that's so cool. I think that's what the young kids say, right? It's capped. It's uncapped. I don't know which one it is. I do want to mention, when you're hearing this episode, it's probably midway through season 1. So therefore, we welcome 2022. And therefore, it's almost at a pivot point where we talk about New Year resolutions. Like, have you kept up? Are you part of the whole fitness game? How is that going? Have you expressed certain words of wisdom for yourself to track along in this year? Are you in alignment of that? I personally think it's more of a concept of accountability and growth, which looks more like a light guidance of what you want to improve on or be more conscious about or have more mindfulness about than like a goal. I feel like the idea of a goal is very much a 90s concept of this is what we should do. And it's very limited in my mindset. I feel like if you're going for New Year resolutions as like, this is what's the one and only thing that is achievable, and here's the black and white aspect of it, I feel like then you miss the whole point, because not life is as linear as that comes off. Through your own experiences, you've probably seen that you learn best in your mistakes. I've learned best in my mistakes, and mistakes are a way for us to know what isn't right and what isn't serving us, and allows us to have more a reflection moment. And I think in reflection, that's where we are achieving the New Year wisdom that we're teaching ourselves. Does that make sense? And if you're like a mom, the line that comes to me is know who you are meant to be. You know, the scene from Moana where Moana confronts Taka. Taka is like the fire monster in which she's really a goddess called Te Fiti, and she's like this goddess of life. Anyway, I think that rings true no matter what resolutions were set, especially because you're trying to unlearn what isn't serving you. I think this is my second time referencing that. And learning the people and the things and the experiences that do nurture you and serve you for your happiness, those moments of happiness. Not necessarily an end and be all of happiness, but moments of what makes you feel like you belong in this world, that makes you feel grounded. And that, as like a longevity point, I personally think that's more worth it than to say, this is my point, this is how I win, this is the end goal, then I'm worthy. I feel like you're setting yourself up for less than expectations, and that in itself is not growth. I think that is the opposite. I think that's misleading, that's cold, and that's so empty. And those are not things that you want to fulfill yourself as anybody. You don't need to earn that or not earn that in order to be a growing person. And when you flourish in what serves you and what nourishes you, that allows you to be the best version of you. And it allows you to also learn why your negative habits are negative and how to undo them. I think that's one of my biggest lessons as like, I guess they're grown up here. When I was setting intentions for 2022, I was reminded of the years into motherhood and the idea of finding where you belong as like kind of messy. Still is, and I'm 3 years old. I see this concept with moms that are empty nesters, those are with teenagers, So it's not really just in the first hard years of parenting. I have been sort of a chameleon my whole life. So, well, I grew up in the ghetto and then was forced in educational spaces called public school with lack of actual education and more so just a societal salad or fruit salad, I guess you can call it, where being cultured was kind of just a core learning concept. And I personally think it was like a pity party for like rich people who to say, hey, I went to public school. And just living in two different cultural expectations and themes of normalcy. You would think that living in the gray would be something I'm an expert on. Well, kind of. The need for belonging is obviously human. I know that, you know that, but that doesn't make it any easier, when you don't have that like friend groupie to just be you. And I'm talking about like being moms here and share those same things and process them together. Like when your kids learn to turn over or if they're sleeping through the night or just mutual mommy things that would be nice to have friends for. So if you're like me, that person ends up being your partner, like instead. I know I talk his air off as like the female experience in parenting. I recall being 25 with a 1-year-old, and where I was in life was very much more like a 34-year-old, a husband, a whole house, a dog, 2 cars, and a very, very sweet bedtime at 9 o'clock. Whether I liked it or not, because I was exhausted. And I really like my wine and very much living my domesticated life by choice. I adored my TV shows, especially if I can watch them on reruns. I love my guilty pleasure of reality TV. Selling Sunset is amazing. The Kardashians, I don't know how I feel about them. I think that they're some really smart entrepreneurs, that's for sure. But as far as like they talk and everything, I just don't get that. Like the California thing. I do find it so fun on TikTok though. I think there's a lady who like does really good like renditions of them. And I think those are hilarious because you literally can't tell which sister is talking about what because of their tone of their voice. And I guess, I don't know, I have a sister who has a pretty monotone voice, but just how they talk, I don't know, the Valley accent, it's I guess that's the entertaining part, right? That's the entertaining part that we're all looking for here. So anyway, as I was saying, I very much like my bedtime by 9 and my wine that I even get them like subscribed monthly. But anyway, what I was trying to say was, but goodness, the elder millennials are so weird, especially since I had everything young and though lived the same domesticated life as the same elder millennial who's say, I don't know, 35, 37, 38. It's so weird when they're like seemingly looking down their noses at my situation. And like, that's a little sad. Like, I get I'm young, but I promise you I've lived my lessons and I probably have lived more traumas in a lifetime than a normal millennial who lives in the suburbs and with a house and dogs and, same scenario. I've learned a lot from those traumas and they also grow you up very quickly, whether you like it or not. And so anyway, when I was on this Peanut app, and I think I talked about it in episode 1, which is like a mom dating app for finding new friends, you really can't tell the ages of mothers, which is why this weird like discrimination thing is weird, because they all respond the same way. And 3 days later, always at like odd time, 7 a.m. or 11 p.m. with no personal expectations of like an actual response rate. And I think that was mutually set across. Because I know I led lots of conversations. It was like, I spoke to you 2 weeks ago. How are things? What's going on? And it was normal. Like there's no need to explain. There's no need to apologize. We just kept the conversation going and what we were now building as mom relationships. So I met the mom who was a 22-year-old who was living with their boyfriend, or the 37-year-old who was solo parenting for the first time, or even the 34-year-old who was recently married and bought their first house and whom was dedicated to her faith, but respected our ways of parenting without that same kind of faith. Do you get what I'm saying? You couldn't really tell what kind of mom they were by their ages because they were all experiencing the expectations of mothering the same way. So it was a huge variant. And I personally only cared to have been able to like share with those that were like-minded stories of milestones, the spit ups, the traveling anxiety, the trading parenting books, to kind of just better ourselves in the way of parenting. That's what I took out of it. And so being a millennial mom, it's still in like that same gray space where like I've always had to navigate through. But I promise you, it's so weird when it's like these boxes that you're put into when you are a young millennial mom, because it's like you belong, but not really. But then again, what is belonging within the mothering community, as everything is all different anyway. And there are already a huge span of finding ways to not just belong and connect with. And that's kind of how this podcast came to be, because you don't need to be a certain age or a background or anything like that to just have a connection, like a mom connection, a mom talk. And not a mom talk necessarily about everything that is going wrong in your life, but just more so to talk so that the suck doesn't suck so bad and you can actually quite enjoy your little break that you do get throughout the day. I do want to bring back that, like, though the whole mom friends thing is kind of weird, I will say that it's been the most mature relational breakups because they're all mutually respected when they don't work out, because it's for the love of being moms. It's like, I get it. You're a mom. I'm a mom. We aren't mixing. So that's all right. I'm going to go do me and you go do. I wish you and your family so much happiness, and you do the same. And that's it. And it's so weird because I also then hear of this trend called ghosting moms, and I don't really know what to think about it, because my experience, I've never been personally ghosted for means of like ill intentions or awkwardness. And I think that makes it less worse when you get ghosted, because it's a means of, did this mean to be a personal and intentional thing? Or is this just more so like we as people don't connect and therefore we're people? I think that's where the difference is. Because I promise you, you'll be a lot happier if you just let them go and honor the good in the conversations that you had, because you needed those moments to be processed with somebody that wasn't your partner and that was experiencing the same thing. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay to let go of and still honor at the same time. They both can coexist for sure. Lastly, I want to say that us millennial moms are pretty cool. I mean, TikTok has shown us that millennial moms, single, stay-at-home moms are usually the best people to get down with it, because they are the most relatable people out there. In the funny, in the sadness, in the happiness, in trying to find the dating, trying to find the right middle ground, and trying to find balance. I have seen that's what I relate with the most. And I know I have some moms that I follow that, because of their content is so relatable and so on point, that's what makes them cool. And that makes me want to aspire to be a lot more like them, to just be themselves and be the best examples. And I can tell they're just going to be great role models for their kids, because they really make sure that whatever that they're putting out there is because of good faith and good laughter. And that's never a bad thing at all. Also, we're still full human beings, entirely human beings, aside from being having babies. And I will say this took me a long time to understand, because again, I've always wanted to be a mom. I could not wait to be a mom. And then I became a mom, and I was all into being a mom for about 2 years. And then something about turning 2. I talked about this with Brie as well too. And on like episode 4 or 5. And we talked about how you snap out of this like motherhood thing that you're in for 2 years, and you can't, by default, that's just your life. And you're like, hold on, who am I as a woman? Who am I as a person? Where's the philantha that I know that I've always been true to, that was a go-getter and was more than just a caregiver and a cook and a chef and a chauffeur and all of that? Where am I? Who am I? And I know we are still full-on human beings, to the point that now I get why older moms or moms who've had multiple children can say, the feelings that you're having are not going to be as intense or more so familiar, in that you feel the need to protect so often when you had the little babies. Like, for example, when I first had Avery, it took us almost 2 months before I can even go out without her. And the first time I went out, I was in tears. We were watching like a fun movie, and I was in full on tears because it was the first time I was away from her. First time she was away from me. I cried, straight up cried for like 20 minutes. And my husband laughed at me the whole time, just because that's his humor. But I mean, he hugged me and everything afterward. But I still cried. It was a lot for me, and I could not wait for the movie to be done just so I can go hug her again. And now I have a 3-year-old. And I very much trust my husband as the co-parent to watch her for a few hours. And it's really funny when friends are like, are you bringing her? We can readjust. We can meet at your place or my place so that you can bring her. And I so appreciate that, friends. But two, I really like my time away from her as well too, just in that I need to be nurtured as a human being, as a grown up. And so now I don't mind bringing over a whole bottle of wine and finishing that whole bottle of wine that night and having an amazing time that I don't talk about my daughter. I don't talk about being a mom or being a wife. And I just talk the shit about being a mom at the same time. If you know what I'm talking about if you're a mom. And you talk about each other's dating lives, or not my dating life. I just live vicariously, and I think a lot of us moms live vicariously through our friends who are not in that domesticated life. And talk about what could have, should have, or what our take is on their parenting, what their future parenting would be like. You know what I mean? It's just those conversations that, you go back and forth on. And it's just the banter that carries the conversations that becomes these fun, energetic moments that you needed to be fulfilled so that your glass is full. And then you can return back to your family. And I now, as a mom who has a 3-year-old 3 years out now from the first incident where I explained, I went out for the first time after she was born. And that's the advice that I now understand from moms who have multiple children, that it does get better and it's not as intense, and it's not in the moments of you're going to break down because you're going to miss your kid. And now, of course, I always miss my kid. I miss her right now and she's at school. And it's okay to have moments away from her so that I can be nourished too, and both can coexist together. That is a learned lesson that I think all first-time moms just kind of have to go through. Like, you can't really be taught that, because when you're told that, it will kind of seem like it does not really exist or like not an option. I know for me, that's how it was. And I know when I talk with first-time moms and I try to give that advice, it's almost like I'm speaking another language, and I totally get it. And I expect nothing less when I get told that reaction. You're going to hear Moose grunting here a little bit. Yes, there are people walking across the street. So he just needs to make sure that you know that there are people walking across the street. As I was saying, that nourishment is well needed and necessary. Mom, it is necessary. You need that moment to yourself in order to reclaim being the mom that you are and fill up your cup so it's not always on empty. So when you're given that opportunity to go on a date night or have a moment to yourself, I think that's important that you do that and literally take that advice in. I know that was hard for me to quite understand. Another thing that I don't really get is I think I'm pretty funny, but my husband doesn't think I'm really funny, but I think I'm really funny. And it's more so because I don't understand American idioms, and that's because they don't come natural to me. And English is my second language. So like having that double meaning sometimes doesn't really, I get it, but I need the explanation. And that's like the thinker in me. And that I need to know the ins and outs in order for it to be funny. And I guess at that point, it's not funny as I'm saying this out loud. So I get that. But in English, it's so hard because I don't get them. So that's my little 2 cents. Do you get them? Are they easy for you? Are they like something that you just get when somebody throws it out there in social conversations? Because I don't. I don't all the time. I'm trying to look up what an idiom is, if you don't know what that is. So that's like a hot potato, a controversial topic or a situation that is awkward or unpleasant. I've never heard about it. Like, would you say that's a hot potato topic, or that's a hot potato? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we'd use that. I understand it's a piece of cake. That's easy. Like something that's easy to do. Or like once in a blue moon. I love that. I think that's a metaphor. Is that considered a metaphor? I think so. Or a bed of roses. I don't get that one. It says it means easy option. Like taking care of my younger sister is no bed of roses. She's very silly. No bed of roses. But why would you, is that a romantic thing? Like a bed of roses? Is that romantic? Noel said younger sister. See, I don't get it. Raining cats and dogs. See, I think this is really funny. This is a really funny way to use for a play on words. Haha, another one, right? Where the meaning says raining very heavily. I wouldn't say it's raining really heavily. See, now this makes me say maybe I've been using this idiom wrong the whole time. I do have a story about this next one though. It's when pigs fly. Something that will never happen or is impossible. I've never really heard about this until the moment when I worked at Target and they had this, it was in an agile workspace, or they were transitioning into that. And they had this board that said when pigs fly. And I never understood it. I didn't understand what they meant by it, like professionally. And apparently this was like the board that if they could have the option for the dream solution or something that they've been asking for a really long time that they wish it would come to life. I guess that's the same meaning that they have on this page. It says something that will never happen or is impossible. And I didn't get it. Like when pigs fly, I didn't really get, is that like something that you don't believe is true or something that can't be believed that is true? I guess that's the idea of impossibility. But in the social environment, they use this all the time. And I was a little confused because I never really knew how to use it in a sentence or how not to say it in a way that made me more seen as a person of color in a room of white people, of not understanding it. And also the idea of idioms, I didn't understand that that's what all of these were classified as. That's the thing about English in America that nobody understands. And I was born and raised here, so go easy on me a little bit. Ha, that's another one, right? I think so. I do understand devil's advocate, one who presents as like the counter argument. That one makes sense. Or what's missed the boat? Missed the chance? Peter wanted to enter the drawing competition, but he was too late to enter and he missed the boat. But why would you be missing the boat? The boat is huge. You see the boat. Did you get on the boat late? See, I don't get that one. Or like, here's the other one I don't get. Apple of eye. Someone very precious or dear. Every kid in the world is the apple of their parents' eyes. I'm reading the meaning and then the example. Apple of eye. But when you look at apple, what is the eye of the apple? The seed? What is the relation of the seed to the apple? The apple of the eye? I don't get that one. I get it. I get the idiom. I don't get how it came to be. Like, I want the history of how that came to be. Ooh, this next one I didn't realize was an idiom. It says, happy wife, happy life. To have a good life, you need to have a good wife. I think this is more so like a catchphrase, if I'm using that right, than it is an idiom, because this is not advice that you should give anybody who's married, especially in the 21st century, who values equal same-sex values in life, economically, politically, socially, intimately. It's not something that I know my husband and we go by at all. It's more so find happy mom and dad, and then you will have happy life. Two people matter. And it's not always about compromise. It's about using the wise mind. And that is a lot to unpack as it's multiple therapy sessions. Another thing that I don't get, and I guess this is like might rage some parents, is like, so, our daughter is mixed. She's Asian, white, and black. And so it's important that I raise her to values that means and aligns with that. And so obviously we can pick and choose because we're adults and we can do that. And I think one of the things that was a big uproar, I know was kind of hard to understand when it came to like her being at daycare and at school and at home and stuff, and just at her grandma's house, is that I never really taught her table manners. I never really taught her like, yes, ma'am, thank you, ma'am, that stuff, because that's not an Asian mannerism. That's a white mannerism. That's not really a black mannerism. It's unlearning the white saviorship aspect of that. Does that make sense? In Asian culture, there's certain foods that we eat with our foods. Like the meals, it's most appropriate that you're eating it with your hands. And like sticky rice, how are you going to eat sticky rice with knife and fork and spoon? That's kind of weird. And when you eat it with something else, like say fried eggs or lab, you're supposed to like dip it together, fold it together, and put it in your mouth. And so when it comes to meals, especially when Avery was learning how to eat at like 6 months, because we did baby-led weaning, we allowed her to use her hands, as that helps with hand-eye coordination, and that helps with her stemming and feeling, using her 5 senses in order to sustain understanding how to eat and what to eat and how much to eat, and her listening to her body for the first time when she was full, if she needed more. So point is that ever since then, whenever we had occasions where she was with her in-laws, my in-laws, they would enforce like a spoon and a fork. And I was kind of like, she needs to be able to feel the food before she can eat the food. And
if she can't feel the food and can only feel it through a fork, it's kind of hard for her to be like, let me work on hand-eye coordination from fork and food versus just food in my mouth and food in her hand. Does that make sense? So now that she's all grown up, whenever, she knows how to use a spoon and a fork and everything like that. Obviously, when it comes to like spaghetti, she uses a fork. When it comes to soup, she uses a spoon. When it comes to sticky rice, she uses her hands. Yes, those are things that we've put in place so that she understands. But now that she's older, honestly, I let it go up to her. So if she wanted to eat spaghetti with her hands, I kind of allow that because, again, that is part of her ethnicity as well too, and that would make the most sense. And if she gets frustrated with a fork, we work on the fork work when she's not frustrated. So we do that in like rice play or noodle play. And I think that's a better way to get her adjusted as far as like mannerisms. And when it comes to please and thank yous, now that she's 3, we implement it a little bit more. When she was like 1 and 2, it was just more so fun words to say. They're not going to really understand it. And now that she's 3, she can kind of grasp that a little bit better and understanding you get something out of that. Not to say that because you said please, it makes you a better person, just more so the idea of respect is also an ongoing learning lesson that we are obviously going to teach her as she grows up. So that's something that we're doing a little bit different and unexpected. And so I know it's never really been an issue when it comes to like social gatherings or anything like that, but it has been awkward sometimes when it, again, for example, with her grandma and grandpas, when they're like, you should be using fork, spoon, and whatever silverware you need to in order to eat the foods. And we always have to have kind conversations, as I like to call them, to kind of say, no, she does not. She is a mix of all 3, and we allow her to experience what is mind, body, and soul appropriate, and then what is also culturally respectable and to them all, so that she enjoys all 3 cultures as she grows up. So going back to what we originally talked about here, which is, have you been keeping up with your New Year resolutions? I personally will say I have. And I think mine are a lot easier as I do more like words of wisdom for myself. And one of them is having no expectations. And that's huge as a recovering perfectionist, as it's so hard for me to just not be forcing the idea of perfectionism and having all outlets laid out so that there are no such things as mistakes. I'm usually the hardest one on myself. And I think if I'm hearing this back, this means I've achieved the moment of being able to allow things that are meant for me and have things come towards me and have things be in my direction of success and be in the experiences of what that means, instead of it being like an end goal of this is why and how I will be successful, but more so because I have these experiences, I now feel the success. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I know this episode was a little bit all over the place, and I just wanted to talk and just to rant it out with you because I feel like sometimes we just need those moments. And if you need to just hear somebody in the background today, I'm happy to be that person. And if you're enjoying these conversations, please send me voice notes. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to be able to answer back to you as well too. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of The Necessary Break with your host, Philantha. We love that you enjoyed yourself with this episode. Send us a voice memo of your favorite moment, write a 5-star review, and click subscribe to be the first to listen to the next episode. See you next week.